Hello, I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining us this week on Newsmakers. Well, a few weeks ago, we had an opportunity to find out about the honor flight of the Ozarks and how they honor veterans. Today, we're following up by a visit with a World War II veteran and his guardian who took a trip to Washington, D.C. I'd like to start off by introducing Joe Roe and Arla Price. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
For people who may have missed the first program, Arla, if you could start off if somebody comes up to you and says, I see your shirt, it says honor flight, how do you explain to them what that is?
Well, it's a one-day trip to Washington, D.C. for war veterans to just go and meet with their other veterans and see all their wonderful monuments. We make it on one day, so it's quite a long day, but it's a great opportunity to say thank you to our veterans.
And of course, you are talking today out of the Springfield office or the Springfield branch of Honor Flight.
Yes, that's correct.
But it is a nationwide program.
It is. There's several hubs around the nation, and we serve the Springfield, Joplin, kind of southwest area.
Right. And for people who are watching, you are what we call a guardian, so that's a volunteer position.
A volunteer position, and the guardians are matched with one veteran per trip. And our job is to make sure that our veteran has a wonderful day and they're safe and they're on the bus when they need to be and they're hydrated and all of those things. And it's just a wonderful opportunity.
And Joe, of course, you are the veteran we're honoring today, and you were honored on this flight, World War II veteran.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about your service in World War II, when you joined and how
Well, I went into, along at the last of the war, I went in June of 1944 and got out in June of 1946. And I took my basic training in Farragut, Idaho, and I spent time in San Diego and San Francisco, and later was put on a ship that was commissioned, brand new ship, in Seattle, Washington. And from there we went to the Asiatic Pacific, and we were assigned to aircraft carriers. And when the planes would take off the aircraft carrier, we would stay about 100 yards behind the aircraft carrier, so if a plane didn't make it, we'd be there to pick them up.
Okay, so you were vital.
And that happened a time or two.
So you had a few instances where you were called saying, go pick somebody up.
We had one fellow that was flagging them in, you know, off the end of the carrier, and he fell off. And he was a good swimmer, and he thought he could make it. So the plane dropped a life raft, but instead of going to life raft, he thought he'd swim to our ship, and he just about didn't make it.
You realized it was a lot farther than you thought.
It's kind of bad.
So you were there for the last few months or the end of the war?
Yeah, at the end of the war. And we were in Tokyo Bay about 3 days after the war, and we were a brand new ship, so they wanted us to come back to San Diego and be there for Navy Day.
So when it came time to celebrate, you were back stateside.
So that's how I got back early. Yeah.
But being in Tokyo right after the surrender, that must have been a unique time. That you know, you're in there, one of the first American troops, the people representing our country.
We got to go in the second day, and we didn't know what to expect, but I had one friend, and we were together and walked all around by ourselves with no problem. And a lot of the Japanese would come up and ask for a cigarette. They wanted American cigarettes.
That's what they were wanting when they met Americans at that time. Right. Well, I look forward to hearing more about your experiences in the service, but I also want to hear about your experiences on this trip. When did the two of you take this trip together?
In August of 2015.
So the process, you were paired. How does this work? People are watching that you traveled together. So the honor flight paired you together?
Yes, I've flown before. I've actually made 9 trips, 9 flights, and I was on the list as a guardian for that specific flight. And the coordinator called and said, well, I've got 2 veterans. Which one would you like? Of course, I didn't know. And she says, well, I've got a World War II and a Korean veteran. And I said, oh, I want the World War II, because my mom and my dad were both Army in World War II. My mom was a WAC, so they didn't live long enough to go on these flights. So it's it's a big privilege for me to do this in honor of my folks.
Well, I had the best guardian on the trip because she had been there 5 times or 6 times previously, and she knew what to do and when to do it.
That's great.
Yeah.
So did you have a chance to meet beforehand? I mean, once you got the call, did you
Yeah, a
touch
week
base
before
beforehand?
they have on Sunday, about a week before, you go to Springfield and tell you what everything's going to happen. Give you your shirt, your cap, and a backpack, and it's very, very well planned.
So you knew they had a plan in place, and you were going to have a full day.
But if they didn't have a good plan, we wouldn't got all that done.
There's
In
a
a
lot
day.
of behind the scenes that you can imagine.
Right.
When you take 85 veterans, 85 guardians, and then we always have 4 physicians and 4 nurses that go with us, and then some leadership people who can kind of coordinate. There's a lot of behind the scenes, making sure the buses are there, the lunches arrive on time, and we have enough water and
So a lot of planning went into it.
A lot
now,
of
was your
planning.
trip in the spring or summer? What time of year was
August.
it? August. So it was in the summertime.
A lot of water. We had a lot of water.
a lot of
So
water.
it'll be
of
hot
wheel-
in Washington, D.C. in August.
Yes.
And a lot of wheelchairs.
Yeah.
And that's an important aspect because it's probably, if you go to Washington, I know I've been there, there's going to be a lot of walking. So having wheelchairs for people is a big
Yeah.
help.
Right.
I made it through most of the day, and finally, before the changing of the guard, I let her start pushing me in a wheelchair.
I'd rather make sure that they come home safe because it is a long day and they do get tired. So each bus carries about 40 wheelchairs underneath, so it's available for those who are not just wheelchair bound, but people who just get a little bit
I want
tired.
a break from walking. I've been walking
That's
all day.
right. That's right.
Well, tell me about the process you went through for planning the flight. What made you decide, I want to try to do this? Why I want to try to take an honor flight?
Well, my wife had a cousin, and he'd been on the honor flight, I don't know if it was 1 or 2 years before, and that's the first way I found out about it. And so after I decided to go, I called down there. I got the number and called the office in Springfield, and they sent me an application, and I filled it in. Gosh, I don't know how long I had to wait, but probably a year at least. They wanted to get all the World War II veterans first, and I think we only had 12 on our
the 85
flight.
on the flight, 12 only were.
And I don't know how many had the last flight.
Last
but-
flight, I think they only had 1. So I think we've taken almost all the ones who want to go, but there's room for somebody else if they decide they want to go.
So you had to wait about a year before you actually got to go on the flight. What was your feeling when did they call you, send you a letter, say you've been chosen? What was your
Yeah, I think I talked to them several times on the phone, and they kind of gave me an idea how long it would be. And we had 3 more on that flight from the Lamar area. 2 of them were good friends of mine, and the other one I didn't know, but I had known his wife.
Oh, okay.
And he's passed away now, and it was a good thing that he got to go before he died.
Right, and that's one of your goals is get people while they still have the chance. Now I know you have some pictures, so as we're talking, we'll talk about what you do, and people in our control room can put up some of the pictures, but as we said, you go to Washington, D.C., and there's so much to see there. Is there anything in particular you said, I really want to see when I go to Washington? Your goal that you had?
Well, the World War II memorial is a pretty good sized memorial, and it has columns for each state, and they're in the order that the state became a union.
So you had, I guess, 48
And
columns because we
had
had
one
48
of-
states.
That's right.
We had one picture that I was standing in front of the Missouri column.
So you were from Missouri when you served, and you continue to live in
Yes,
Missouri and
yes.
carrying through. So being able to see your home state column and
Now
represent.
that's a Korean wall with names on it.
So you not only did you see the World War II, you saw Korea, Vietnam, some of the other memorials that were there.
Yeah, the Marine Corps, Air Force,
So a lot of people being able to see the specific.
We didn't get to, now that's the Air
That's the Air
Force,
Force.
Okay.
and there's 3 columns there, and the tallest one is 375 feet high, and they're made out of stainless steel, real shiny.
Beautiful.
That must have been a cloudy day,
Yeah.
and it represents up, and away.
Their takeoff and the Air
Yeah.
Force model tying that together.
But they're real shiny and stainless steel, like the arch in St. Louis.
So same type of construction with stainless
Yeah.
steel and tying that together. So to be able to capture these pictures, you can see the memorials. This the
Yeah, no, this is Vietnam, I
Vietnam.
think.
yeah.
And those are bronze statues, and I would assume rather hard to make.
A lot of detail on those. So there's a lot of
Yes.
time and put into planning for those.
Beautiful.
So you had a mix of veterans on the trip. It wasn't just all World War II. You were able to interact then with maybe some Vietnam, some other veterans that were there.
I don't know where this got in there,
Abraham Lincoln
Oh,
with the Lincoln
yeah.
Memorial.
Yeah. Yeah.
but we didn't get to go there, did we?
I don't think we went up the steps. We
Oh,
could see
yeah,
it.
we went by
could see
there.
it from where we were, but we
Right.
decided that we could see Abe from where we were
He
standing.
was. There are a lot of steps leading up
A
to
lot of
Abraham
steps,
Lincoln.
yes.
And here's the Vietnam Memorial where people still leave things today.
They
memory.
do. They
Oh,
do.
yeah.
Flowers and caps and yeah,
So you can
very
see
moving.
Moving, the people still remembering people whose names are on that memorial.
Yeah, a
Tying
lot
that
of
together.
names.
No, that's Vietnam. See, in August, those trees had start turning.
So you're colorful, pretty. Visiting, everything was still green, and tying that together. So, so the pictures really help you. And this is part of the World War II, the
Now
Pacific,
this-
right?
Yes, and on one side is Atlantic, and this is the Pacific.
So you were able to see.
And in the middle is a kind of a
Fountain.
fountain, yeah.
Okay, so you have a fountain that ties the two sides together.
Yes, it is. It is very beautiful.
And more of the memorial. So,
These pictures don't seem to be in order, do they? They kind of bounce around.
of course, the Washington
Yeah,
Memorial.
the
Yes.
that's
top
in
of the
there.
Washington Monument. Gosh, I forgot when that was built, but that's old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then,
Now this is
Iwo Jima.
raising the flag at Iwo Jima.
The Marines.
And you got to see that.
Yes.
That memorial. That's a
Yes.
Marine
Yeah,
memorial.
you're very, very close. Now this is a guy, I guess he does this every day. They have honor flights in there most every day. And he goes out there and it's hot. I don't see how he stands that.
Yeah.
So he's performing for the
He
veterans.
plays the bagpipes. In fact, he plays while they march in to the memorial, and he'll play Amazing Grace in memory of the veterans who did not return. And
Right.
It's very moving. And he wears kilts, so he's got the whole
He's
thing.
got the whole costume.
He's got the whole
outfit,
costume.
Yeah, and tying that together. So look at some other pictures while we have here.
Then we go up and,
Of course, there's Abraham Lincoln.
now
from
there
the
we are
memorial.
back, see?
Yep, we're back to Abe.
Yeah. And is this?
Now on the Korean, they have a wreath that they place, and that wreath is replaced every day.
It's a daily replacement. Now,
And,
did you?
From the people of Korea
Yeah,
in gratitude.
Oh, okay. So the government of Korea, the people of Korea, are providing that. The Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, is that something also you were able to see? The changing of the guard?
The changing guard, which is my favorite. That's really it's just amazing. Every American, I hope, has the opportunity to see the changing of the guard. It's unbelievable.
It's very formal, but it's a ceremony that really has a lot of meaning, and people can see what's
When I
happening.
see a veteran that has a cap on, you know, World War I, World War II, and I'll go up to them and thank them for the service and tell them about the honor flight. And many of them have already seen it, and many are not interested in going. And some are not able to go, but we had several on our trip that would not have been able to go if they hadn't had a guardian and a wheelchair.
Yeah, because we're able to take veterans that are wheelchair bound
Right.
or on oxygen, or they have medical needs, since we have the physicians that go with us.
That's great.
And Mercy Hospital in Springfield provides them with those wheelchairs.
So they're able to, even though they can't walk to the memorials, they can still have the wheelchair and be able to provide it. And then somebody to help guide them, such as a guardian, to get there.
Yep, we
Right.
we're trained, stay by their side, make sure that they're within, eyesight. So I didn't have any trouble with Joe.
Joe was able to.
Yeah, he stayed pretty close.
Well, Joe, did you find yourself sharing and talking to the other veterans? You mentioned the other men from Lamar.
Oh yeah, and there's some pictures in someplace that I remember one Navy woman at WAC, and one captain, I think, and they stopped and talked to me, and I enjoyed that.
So the veterans on the flight, and as they're meeting people in Washington, there's a lot of sharing going on.
Yes, a lot
Well,
of
these they were not members of the honor flight. They were just there.
They were just in Washington.
Yeah.
So, now I understand that you have a special reception as well when you return to Springfield. That people come out. Tell me about
we had
that.
a reception when we got to Springfield that morning,
Before you even left.
and then when we got to Washington D.C., there were many, I don't know how many, but all the way from where we got off the plane clear out to the bus, there were lines of people, and women with small children. They followed us all the way out the bus. We got pictures of it there someplace.
just to say thank you.
Saying thank you to the veterans. So
Yeah.
that must have been a special moment when you saw that, that they're there to say thank you, to be there for you.
And I can't imagine that that many people would take the time out to do that.
It shows how much they appreciate what
Yeah, and
veterans
there's
are
flights
doing.
come in there every day.
And so,
And there was at least 3 that were there the day we were there.
so you had 3
One
flights.
was from Oklahoma, and one was from Illinois.
I think so, yeah.
So,
And if there was one of the pictures would come up, I would like to show it. It said, I can't remember what it said. It said everybody can't be a veteran. Some of us have to sit on the curb and watch.
Oh, yeah.
people-
Quote from
Real
Will
cute.
Rogers.
people watching and supporting you.
Yeah,
and helping
right.
out that way.
That was on the back of the Illinois congregation.
Yeah, yeah. So you had a very full day. You leave real early in the morning, and
We left Lamar at 4 o'clock in the morning. No, we had
I think
to be
we
down
had to
there.
be there at 4:30.
Had to be there at 4
You-
o'clock
at
in the
Springfield.
morning.
Yeah, in Springfield,
Yeah,
yeah.
and they had coffee and donuts and so forth. And we met our guardian, and then we sat down and waited for the plane.
and then you flew to Washington nonstop, which is hard
Yeah.
to do. So you have a charter flight that
Charter
takes you right
flight.
there.
It's very expensive for them to do this, and they had to raise the money by donations.
Right.
And I think somebody told me that airplane cost $200,000 for the day.
So that's a key to success, is for Honor Flight to be able to continue to raise the funds to offer these flights.
Right. The veteran always flies with no charge ever for anything. The flight or the meal or the bus or anything, that's all free for the veteran. And the guardian pays a fee
Okay.
for the wonderful opportunity to
Right.
be a
To be
guardian.
able to do that, and of course
Right.
there are other costs involved. But
Yes.
the organization itself, ongoing year-round, is looking for funding, ways to help continue these flights.
Sure.
To provide that service.
Yeah, they have somebody in the office most all the time,
I think so.
and arranging the dates for the difference to go.
Right. So you'll
Now
have.
they're trying to get all the Korean, then it'll be the Vietnamese, but
Yeah.
To the
they're
different.
having a hard time getting World War II.
Right.
Yeah.
Fewer World War II. Well, speaking of World War II, when you travel and you meet World War II veterans, you mentioned you notice people's hats and so forth, but do you talk about, I was in the Pacific, where did you serve? Do you find a lot of people, other veterans asking you that question, sharing your experiences?
Yeah, some of them don't want to talk about it, but especially the ones that had bad experiences. There was a fellow from Lamar, I didn't know him, but he was on a destroyer, and they had an aircraft carrier that had been in Honolulu for repairs. It was going back out to meet the fleet, and this destroyer he was on, they met the main Japanese fleet, and their ship got sunk, and he spent I think, 8 days in the water.
Oh, wow.
And they almost all died. Some of them did. They had about 10 on a life raft, and no water to drink, nothing to eat. It's kind of sad.
Right. But it shows you the sacrifices people made to serve the country.
Some were like me and were lucky and didn't have to go through that.
But you were there and you saw the end of the war, and then you had some time serving your country as the shift from wartime to peacetime started.
Yeah. My mother had 5 boys, and all of us were in the service. And had one brother that got killed. He was in the Army, and the rest of us were in the Navy. And I had a brother-in-law killed in service.
So family, at that generation, everybody pretty much was tied somehow to the war, time together. And I understand your wife, who's watching today, you've been married a long time, and she's been by your side supporting you.
Yeah, in June we celebrate our 70th wedding anniversary.
Wow, well, that's great. So family ties, families, help each other throughout those years. That's special. Congratulations.
But I'm 93 years old, and not too many left of the World War II. So it's hard to find them.
Right. And do you find that people, they want to share, you want to share your experiences with family or friends that, that since there aren't too many World War II veterans around, I know there's a history project, they're asking people to share their stories.
Yeah, and we took the pictures that we have here on DVD, and I gave one to each one of the other veterans that were from Lamar, so they could show their family.
Right. So it helped to touch other people as well.
Exactly.
That. Right.
Exactly.
And the effect that it has and being able to see the appreciation to the veterans from a guardian's perspective, I mentioned that's special as well.
I do. I love it when we get to Washington, D.C. and the folks that come out that live there just to say, I'm glad you're here, welcome to our city, thank you for your service. And then when we come home at night, and Springfield Airport is just filled with, it's not just family members, but there's, just the general community want to come out and say, welcome home, welcome home. Because a lot of these veterans, when they came home, they didn't come home to a ticker tape parade and a reception. Sometimes they just
walked off the ship
walked
and you're
off the
going
ship.
home.
That's right.
And in Washington, D.C., the traffic is terrible, and how those people can get up and make it down there.
So they had some determination to get to the airport and get across town.
And it's kind of the time when everybody's trying to go to work and the traffic's terrible.
So
they love to do it. Because if you thank them from a guardian, I always thank them for coming, and they say, no, it's our privilege. Don't thank us. We love to do this. So.
Well, Joe, when you came home and you had time and talking to your wife, and she said, "How was it? What was the trip?" How did you describe it to her? How did you?
You mean when I first got home?
When you first got home from the honor flight, you got off the flight and you're going home.
Oh,
that
gee,
day.
I can't remember too much except that I got to visit and run around with a lot of my friends that I knew before, and I graduated from Camden High School, 1942. And I think there may be very few of us left. There was 21 in my class, and all of the boys, but there was only 6 boys. And as far as I know, I'm the only one still alive.
But that whole high school class probably ended up in the military serving their country many times.
Yeah, one of them I know was in the Naval Air Force, and he had a crash and was killed. The others, I don't know. One of the boys I graduated with, I think, was in the Army, and after he got out of the Army, he went to college, and he ended up as president of the college in Branson, in Hollister. Yeah.
So people took different paths after the war, different professions, different jobs.
But when I got home, I was only home maybe a month, and I started looking for a job.
Right.
And I answered an ad in the Springfield newspaper, and that's how I got to Lamar.
So then you stayed in Lamar since then. It became your home community.
Yeah, well, I would, every veteran that I see that have a cap on, I try to talk them. Well, everybody can't go. Only the ones that were in a war.
Right.
If you were not in the service during a wartime, then you're not eligible to go.
So there's certain criteria that they must meet to be able to go. But
Yeah,
you encourage
during the
people to
wartimes.
apply, and if you see someone who says, I haven't had a chance to go, you would say, please try it. Yeah.
So they have to contact the office in Springfield. They fill out an application, and it tells your term of service, and then they determine whether you are eligible to go or not.
And I imagine there's still a waiting list as far as people wanting to look at going.
I think there is still a waiting list, but I think for the World War II veterans, if anyone wanted to apply, they would go to the top of
They
the
push
list.
to the top of the list.
Yeah, I
for
think
them.
the last flight they had, most were Vietnam veteran era veterans.
Okay. Now, from the Guardian side, is there a need? If people are watching us say, well, I think it would be interesting to be able to be a guardian and to help these veterans. Is there a need for that as well?
Oh, there is a need, and I would really encourage anybody who's able-bodied and who is patriotic and always had this yearning to say thank you in a unique way to our veterans. This is a great opportunity for one-on-one to say thank you, but also is going as a group, because I would say there's more laughter than there is tears on this trip. I mean, it is kind of nostalgic in a way, but to see the guys kid around with each other and the different branches.
Little rivalry between Navy
Yeah.
and Army. And
A little bit.
Now, she was able to go on the same honored flight with her husband.
I
Not
was.
as his guardian, but
he was
Yeah.
serving as
He
well as
was
that guardian.
Vietnam era, and I was a bus helper.
and he was on the list a long time.
About a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, about
And
a
both
year.
of you have kept in touch since that flight, obviously. So establishing those friendships a big part of what
Oh
you do.
yeah, we've been
We
2
spent
years.
last Thanksgiving at their home, and have been invited again this year, but we're not going to be able to make it this year.
But we keep in touch, make sure that he's doing all right and his family is all right.
And she has a nice family in there, very friendly and nice to us, and
Well, that's great.
we've had a great
It's-
experience
It was a great
together.
match.
That's
Yeah.
great. Well, I'd like to thank both of you for being on the program today and sharing with our audience. I appreciate you coming here today.
Thank you for
very much.
asking us.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank you for tuning in this week for Newsmakers. I'm Judy Stiles. I'll see you again next week at the same time on this station.